Hey guys, welcome back to another video on the channel. If you enjoy the content on this video, please give us a like and consider subscribing to the channel. It's completely free, and as I say in each video, it helps us achieve our goals of reaching 1,000 subscribers. We've just hit 800. I'm really happy with the growth of the channel, helping out you guys to improve. But I've noticed that more than 50% of you are still not subscribers of the channel. So I would really appreciate you just hitting the button below and joining the academy. So on the agenda this afternoon, a new game from the recently finished World Senior Championship. One of my favorite players of all time. I've devoured all his books, and he's been without doubt one of my model players in my own career. Many of the openings I've used have originated from his books and his learnings in his games. I'm talking about Grandmaster from England, Dr. John Nunn. Now, Nunn retired when he was about 45, 46 after a really incredible career. He was world number 10 during forming part of the best players in the world for many, many years. I think he even reached number 3 or 4 at some point. Nearly 2,700, played with the best players in the world for many, many years. Even Kasparov said that he was one of his most dangerous opponents. And also a brilliant mathematician, well-versed in many other disciplines, an all-round excellent player. He retired from chess when he started lacking his playing abilities. I think it was around 45, 46, maybe a bit earlier. And dedicate himself to becoming a chess author, and a very, very prolific one. I have many of his books here at the back, several of his books, and I've read all of them, devoured them actually. I would really recommend some of them for you guys. His books on his best games are excellent. But now he returned to play when he started playing in senior events, and he's already become world champion, and he plays regularly on the senior circuit. Obviously his rating has dropped, which is understandable due to his age, but he still is a very, very strong player. As we'll see in this game, he's still a very aggressive and tactical opponent. His opponent playing with the black pieces, a Swedish player, no FIDE title, but he's rated 2311 FIDE, which is very high. It's actually even a few points higher than me at the moment. His name is Dan Uddenfeldt. I think that's the way it's pronounced. And let's get into the game. So, Nunn played, as usual, e4. All his career, he was always an e4 player, with a very well thought out aggressive repertoire. d6, d4, bishop to d7, bishop g7 and d6. This is the PIRC modern defense. It's actually the modern, although after black plays knight to f6, it will transpose back into the PIRC. Some players enjoy starting with g6. There are a few reasons. One of the reasons is to entice the opponent to go for c4, which would then convert the position into a King's Indian defense, which is actually one of Nunn's favorites with black. But most e4 players do not enjoy grabbing the extra space with c4, and they prefer just to play knight c3 and go with development, especially as in the game, if they're thinking of long castling, then they would prefer the pawn on c2. So Dan obviously understood that his opponent might be enticed to play c4, so he tried this move order. But in the end, here some players go a6. This is what's called the Tiger Modern. But Dan transposed back to the PIRC. And John Nunn went for queen to d2. Now this is called the attack 150, or the 150 attack. I've seen it named by this funny 150 attack name. I just call it the bishop e3, queen to d2 long castle variation against the PIRC, and it's very dangerous. Basically the idea is to put the bishop on a6 as soon as black castles, long castle, bolster the center with f3, protecting this pawn and also stopping knight to g4, and then just crash through with h4, h5. Very similar to the Yugoslav attack in the Sicilian Dragon, and also similar to some of the variations in the Shamish King's Indian. It's very well known and very dangerous. It's so dangerous, in fact, that it's recommended for black to play c6 here to delay castling and get something going on the queen side as soon as possible. And Uddenfeldt plays c6. And Nunn goes bishop to a6 anyway, which might be slightly premature. I've seen long castle being played here, and I've also seen f3 being played. By the way, interesting to note that any knight g4s at this point would just be contested with bishop to g5, and it's all good. The knight will have to drop back after f3. In any case, c6, bishop to h6, and here I checked with the engine, and theory recommends swapping on h6, which is always something difficult to do, and then to play e5, attacking the pawn on d4. And of course, if white swaps, then he can no longer long castle, and if rook to d1, we can find a safe square for the queen on e7. Any queen to g7 is just contested by rook to g8, pushing the queen back. So this was the best idea, but instead Uddenfeldt played castle, and this might be slightly dubious. This right actually drops straight back into the line we should try to avoid with black. Castle, b5, black is threatening b4, followed by knight takes e4, so it's time to bolster the e4 square. b4 hits the knight. We can drop back to e2 or to b1. Both have some advantages and some inconvenience. On b1 specifically, we might end up losing the a2 pawn, but it's just a pawn and there's no mate there. So if our attack is strong enough, we can give up that pawn. On the other hand, e2 allows us to play king to b1 and knight c1 to protect, but it does hinder very slightly the development of the king side. I personally prefer knight to e2, because I do enjoy dropping back with the knight to c1. I do allow black to develop, but this knight on c1 is very protective of my queen side, and now I'm ready to push forward on the king side. But John, who understands his position much better than me, obviously prefers knight to b1, which is also quite good. Queen to b6, h4, bishop to a6. Maybe slightly slow. I'm not sure this is the best way to contest this this opening. I found that generally you really need to avoid this in the first place, but we do need to create some sort of counterplay either on the queen side or in the center. Now here, Nunn could have played bishop takes, knight takes. The idea is to keep the rook on d1 and not allow him to swap here. The knight is misplaced on e6 anyway. And now h5, with the point that if black captures, which is a bad move, we have a typical sacrifice which you should know, which is rook takes, pawn takes, and now queen to g5. And now white would be winning because there's no way to stop the mate on g7. Notice how queen takes d4 would parry the mate if the rook wasn't on d1. And that's why it's a best idea to exchange on a6 first. Of course, against h5, black doesn't have to capture on h5. But then we are threatening to capture, to land on h6 with check, and then g4, g5, and black is in big trouble because of the weakened queen side, as we will see in the game. John preferred to play knight e2, which I think is also okay. It does give the computer-esque line for black, knight h5, g4, take, and knight to g3. Even this is good for white, but the computer suggests it might be a better try for black. In any case, after knight h5, g4, take, I wonder, when I saw this position, I wondered if white could just capture on h5. I haven't analysed this because there's no need to, because recapture with the bishop is more than good enough. But I wondered if it might be possible. Uddenfeldt still plays slow with knight bt7, and now h5 is very strong. And black is getting all that he wants. Queen to a5, hitting the two pawns. Take. Of course, if we capture with the h pawn, this is straightforward. Take, check, and mate. This is the basic pattern that you should remember when playing this variation. This is the idea that you should go for. Obviously, Uddenfeldt spots this attack and captures with the f pawn, but now, although h7 is guarded by the knight for a few more moves, the e6 square is now very weak, and if a knight lands there, that could be very dangerous. So obviously Nunn goes for that capture, and before playing this move here, he goes for knight to f4, just threatening knight to e6 woody material. Now black is already in trouble here. I did consider, instead of king to f7, which was the move he played in the game, I did consider queen takes a2, which protects the square. But now we play the intermezzo, bishop takes a6, and we check. And although this was probably black's best option to avoid being mated very fast, it's clear that white is in the driving seat here and will win with his extra exchange, although he might take a bit of time. Uddenfeldt played king to f7. Capture, capture. And now, maybe in this type of scenario is where you can notice that John Nunn is not playing at the same level as 25, 30 years ago. Because I'm completely sure that at his peak, he wouldn't have played queen to e3, which is very reasonable, threatening e5, but he would have calculated with precision and gone for e5 straight away, pawn takes, knight takes, queen to e3 hitting the knight, and if the knight drops back, there's a check on e6. I'm sure he spotted in his analysis, but I'm sure he calculated this, but at some point he stopped calculating because he didn't see it clearly enough. Queen to a5 protecting, rook d e1, not an easy move to see, and it must be with this rook, not with the other rook, so that's maybe one of the reasons he didn't see this move. Black still drops back to protect. Of course, the other knight is unprotectable because we capture on h7, and now the key move he had to see, but he didn't have to see it here, he had to see it here, which is quite far away. The key move he had to see here would be rook takes h7 check, fantastic rook sacrifice, knight takes, check, first on e6, then on g6, and then rook takes e7 with a double threat of mate which cannot be parried. But of course, imagine that here you can't calculate and visualize with 100% precision. The knight is hanging on f4. There could be queen to g5 check protected by the knight. Of course, when you get here, you see this is not possible. But when you're calculating it from here, it's a bit more tricky. Variations get mixed up, and it's always easier to see the line when you've already played it out. You can imagine this line now because I've played out the moves. And you might think, okay, yeah, I understand what Michael's saying. I'm sure I could have calculated this myself, but this is not true. Because when someone plays out a line and you visualize it, then the moves come much easier in your head. When you're thinking about the line, you're thinking in different directions, and many lines overlap themselves, not so easy to calculate. And if you're chess players out there, you know what I'm talking about. So, John Nunn played queen to e3, which is also a very good move, more stable. And the idea is to play e5, but also there's a hidden idea here, queen to b3 and knight to e6, which is what black falls for. g5, check, d5, and now a very strong move, pawn takes pawn, with the idea that if black captures on g4, we check with the queen, discovered check, pick up the knight, and this is a totally hopeless position. And I probably think that John Nunn saw this position much more clearly than the other position when he played queen to e3. So black recaptures, knight takes pawn, threatening discovered, queen to e6, and now he just captured the pawn on b4. And after queen takes, pawn takes, black decided to resign and hope for a better game on the next game. Now, I personally would not have resigned in this position with black, especially playing against a legend of the game such as John Nunn. I would like to spend as much time as possible in front of these players and really learn from them. But of course the position is hopeless. Black is 2 extra pawns down. But I've seen players defend worse positions, so I still think it would have been a good idea to carry on just a few more moves. You never know what can happen. Maybe there's a double pawn here, slightly uncoordinated pieces, but of course the position is clearly winning for white. I hope you enjoyed this game. What I was trying to show you, apart from introducing you all to a player who maybe you don't know, John Nunn, and recommend his books, I wanted you to see how to develop this 150 attack against the PIRC. And I really suggest, if you enjoy opposite coloured attacking games, put this variation into your repertoire, add it to your repertoire. Very easy to play, bishop e3, queen d2, f3, long castle, h4, h5. Super simple and very, very effective at the lower levels, up to about 2200. This variation will earn you a lot of rating points. So keep improving. Enjoy here on the channel. Learn new openings, new ideas. Improve your opening play. Get to learn and meet some of the better players. And we'll see you in the next video, which, by the way, I'm traveling very soon to Cyprus for the Women's Grand Prix. And I do think that in the next video, I'll already be there. Cheers.